Hey, what's happening everybody? My name is Dwayne. In today's video, I'm going to do a quick review on the Guide Gear wood burning stove. And I'm going to tell you whether it gets a thumb up or a thumb down. Here we go. Alright, so here's the stove in all of its glory. And it's important to point out there are two sizes of the stove that were sold on Amazon. I got the larger one. And the larger stove, I'll pop up that stove in the price so you can see the price of that one. And now the smaller version, you can see the price of that one. So I went with the larger mainly because the size of the box. When I refer to this pipe size here, there are two different pipe sizes for these stoves. This one here is a 5.5 inch pipe size. And the other one is 3 and some odd inches. I don't remember exactly. So I'm referring to the larger stove here when I'm talking about this. So these are 5.5 inch pipes, okay? Now, first thing about this stove when we pulled it out of the packaging, okay? The very first thing that I found to be a huge thumb down was that you're supposed to cook this thing outdoors and let it cure the paint or condition the paint, whatever they called it. Because they spray paint on this thing, and and if you were to light this indoors without doing that first, that paint stinks and it's toxic. So right out of the gate, I don't like that at all about this stove. And I don't know if other ones are like this, but I absolutely hated it. I thought it was just stupid. Why put that type of a paint on this thing? I would rather have them sent this to me just bare. And I'm completely not kidding. If they would have just sent me the stove bare, I would have been fine with it. But they put this black paint on it, and I had to cook this thing outside. And they said for a minimum of 3 hours. We were at 5 hours, and it still stunk. I ended up keeping it out there for like 3 days on and off burning it. In fact, the stovepipes, I ended up putting these in a burn barrel and actually just cooking the paint off of them. And I just filled the burn barrel up with wood and just threw them in there. So you can see here, this looks like an old stove. So not a fan. Guide Gear, if you're hearing this, I doubt it, but I really just thought that was just a huge negative to the stove. So that gets a thumb down. Now the next thing that will get a thumb down, I'm just going to go over the negatives right out of the gate, and then I'll tell you the positives. So the next thing that was a negative to me. Now, when you go to the site, they're going to advertise how this has this nice heat-resistant seal on the door, okay? And I'll pop that up here. I just took a couple pictures of my computer. So, you see that? Well, let me tell you the truth. Those things came off within the first time I burnt on this thing. They had some double-sided tape on this stuff, and it just came right off. So they're sitting outside somewhere. They're like fiberglass stuff, so you got to be careful with those things. You don't want to get that stuff on your fingers. They do itch. But yeah, you can see here the remnants of this double-sided tape. Garbage, okay? Just why bother? I just don't understand. Why bother? So they put this double-sided tape and just taped them on here, I just don't get that. So when you close a stove, this one has a little bit of a gap at the bottom, and at the top, it hits here and it closes. Now, I've been in fabrication work for a long time, and I can tell you, putting doors on like this is easier said than done. So, just the DIY aspect of it, to get things flush is always a challenge. So apparently it's a challenge when you have a, corporation that does it too. But anyways, so the door does not close evenly, completely. And so there's that. Now, another thing that's kind of a negative for this is the actual, overall the way things are made on this. It's very chintzy. This handle works okay, but we had a heck of a time initially just getting this thing broken in here. But it's not terrible, but it's not really like high quality here. So you see how this works. It has a spring on there to give it some tension and stuff, and you close it and it's fine. But once you get the hang of it, so I'd say that one there is like kind of neutral. Now, let's go to some another negative thing. Okay, so another negative thing about this stove is that if you want to do your own pipe job on this thing, and you say you want it in a house and you wanted to do all kinds of extensive piping and things like that, you're going to run into a problem. The problem is that given the pipe dimensions on this thing, they are 5.5-inch pipe. All right. And they have at the base here, you can see how they have it flanged out a bit to slide over top. They're made to fit with each other, but it's a weird dimension. I mean, why not just go with 6-inch, right? So if they just went with 6-inch, those are easy to find in the store and you can just add on to it that way. But they made it 5.5-inch. So if you're going to do kind of retrofitting here, you're going to have to go through some hassle to get things to fit right. In fact, that's a 6-inch pipe. And you can see here where I connected it, where I had to actually add a collar around here. I cut one of the remaining pipes here, the chimney pipe, and I put a collar around it, and then I slid that over, and then I riveted it on in four corners, whatever, of a circle. That doesn't even make sense. But yeah, I put 4 rivets in this, and in fact, I riveted this whole pipe. I did it here all the way down, and I put rivets in this because with these pipes, so not only are they a weird dimension, now they do sell extenders for this. So you can buy extensions, and I'll pop the price up on the ones that I had for this stove. So you can see, it's, you know, it's $45 and you get, you know, about 33 inches out of those 2 extensions. I will say the pipes are thick though. So these are very thick pipe. They're probably twice as thick as the ones you get in the store here. The, you know, the kit ones where you just put them together. So they're thick pipe. So they're not bad. I mean, you know, for the amount you end up paying for these extension pipes anyways, you know, I would say just plan on buying extension pipes, you know, and you could go that route because they are thick pipes compared to these. Now, I ended up doing something different here because if you're going to put this through a wall or through the roof, you're going to have to, you know, at least have you're going to need a double walled pipe here to go through your roof or through a wall. And so I ended up having to make something for this. And so what I ended up doing is just buying a few pieces of these, you know, 6-inch pipes, extenders, and I made my own stuff. Because on the roof here, you can see I wanted to put my own, you know, a different chimney on top of it because I didn't like the one that came with this. Because it just, you know, basically is steel with a bunch of holes in it. And I think that would work fine. But I just like the one that had the cone top on it. Because we get heavy monsoons out here, I thought it might be a little better to keep the water from coming down the stove. Anyways, so that's a negative, or I don't even think I can call it a negative, the stovepipe size now that I'm talking. I would just say that if you're going to do any length of pipe on this and you need to double wall, for example, well, you're not going to be able to find a 5.5-inch double wall pipe. You're just not. You're going to have to make your own. Or if you get a 6-inch, just know that you're going to have to do some finagling to get that thing to fit onto the other pipes. So, and that it would go that way with the smaller one as well. So that's something to me that's just, I wouldn't even say that's a negative or positive. I'm just saying it just is what it is. And it's something you should know when you get this stove. So just know that, okay? Now, that leads into these pipes. Now, when you slide these on and off, just know that they are going to wiggle around, okay? Because they're meant to be, I think these are meant to be put in tents and things like that. Now, they flat out say that this is an outdoor stove, meaning it's not really designed to be brought indoors like this, okay? So to give them credit, they never advertise it as such. So I'm using this for a different purpose than what it was intended for. So you got to take this with a grain of salt when it comes to that. Now, you know, if you're going to have a stove like this, though, and you want to put it indoors, it is doable. Let's see, a negative here, just overall the, you know, chintziness of it, the damper here. What I ended up having to do was I just tack welded here the bolt or the nut here, the wing nut, and then I had to tack weld the damper inside because what I found is that when it would stick a little bit to the wall here, this thing would spin freely and then you wouldn't know what position the damper was in because if it's just spinning on it. So I just tack welded it to that. So if you have a welder, you're going to want to do that. Just tack weld this on because this, you know, damper here, it works fine, but I'm just saying, like, it didn't, this thing was already stripped here. The nut wasn't even holding the tension on the spring here. So there was that. What else? So overall, let's say some of the good things about the stove. Good things about the stove. I already mentioned the pipes are really thick, so I was happy with that. It's all solid metal. I mean, there's nothing, you know, the metal's a good gauge and good thickness for it. The door's heavy. Putting the stove together is really easy because they have these Allen wrench bolts here that go into threaded holes, and same with the legs on it. So it's easy to put together. You know, you just have an Allen wrench and, you know, a screwdriver, and you can just put this thing together pretty easily. So there's that. Overall, of course, it gets pretty hot. This size, I think, is a good size for a building like this. This is less than 300 square foot in here, but it's, you know, it will do the job. I mean, I think this would easily heat up an area twice the size of this. So I would say you could do about 600 square foot with this thing, no problem, because it got hot in here real quick when I put this on. So it gets hot, it burns well. I mean, the metal's, you know, pretty solid. You know, so overall, I would say that to give this thing a thumb up or thumb down, this is where I'm at with it. I would give it not a complete thumb up, but I would give it this. So mainly, if that paint wasn't on there like that, I would have given it probably a thumb up overall, because yeah, there's some issues with the stove that I don't like, but that paint stuff was really a negative to me because it was a pain in the ass, and it was also just, you know, it's kind of gross to me to see that, you know, all the fumes coming off that paint. So I really didn't like that. So other than that, everything else, the stuff that I mentioned, if you just take those precautions and just know ahead of time what you're getting into with these pipes, it's not a terrible stove at all. I think for the ones I looked at price-wise and the size, that's where another positive is it's a very good budget stove. You know, it's fairly cheap, and you know, you can get this thing going. If you didn't have to bake that paint off of it, you could hit the ground running with this. But just know, if you get this thing, you're not going to be able to just pack it in your car and go and then run it in your tank. You're going to have to do that prior, because it is what it is. So yeah, that's my review of this stove. If you have any questions in the comments, you can leave them in there. I'm happy to answer them if I can. But this is the Guide Gear wood burning stove review, and I'm over and out.